This kills stage 4 cancer cells. How to starve and prevent colon cancer. YouTube script for Dr. Sophia Bennett Vertical, Bar Health and Fitness Channel. Hey, welcome back. I'm Dr. Sophia Bennett, and before we get into today's topic, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to share with you could genuinely change the trajectory of your health or someone you love. And I don't say that lightly. A few years ago, I sat across from a patient, a 52-year-old man, father of 3, who came into my office thinking he just had some persistent stomach issues. Bloating, some irregular bowel movements, occasional fatigue, nothing he thought was serious. 6 weeks later, we had a diagnosis sitting on my desk that nobody wants to read, stage 3 colon cancer. And the first thing he asked me wasn't about surgery or chemo. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Doc, what did I do wrong? And what can I do?" Now, that question has stayed with me because the answer is complicated, but it's also in many ways more actionable than most people realize. Today, we're talking about colon cancer. Specifically, we're talking about how certain foods, lifestyle patterns, and biological mechanisms can literally starve cancer cells, disrupt their ability to grow, and in some documented cases, stop them in their tracks, even at advanced stages. Now, I want to be clear, and I'll say this once so we're on the same page. I'm not here to tell you that broccoli cures cancer. That's not what this is. But what I am going to walk you through is the science. Real, peer-reviewed science about how your daily choices either feed cancer or fight it. And that distinction could save your life. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Cancer cells are not these invincible, mysterious monsters. They're actually quite predictable. They have very specific needs. They need sugar. They need inflammation. And they need an environment where your immune system is too tired or too overwhelmed to fight back. The moment you understand that, everything changes because now you're not just a passenger in this story. You become the person who controls the environment that cancer either thrives in or starves in. Colon cancer specifically is one of the most diet-responsive cancers we know of. The colon, your large intestine, is in direct contact with everything you eat. Every meal you consume passes through that tissue. Every toxin, every fiber, every processed chemical, every anti-inflammatory compound. Your colon sees all of it. So, it stands to reason that the colon would be one of the organs most dramatically affected by what you put in your mouth every single day. And the statistics back this up. Research consistently shows that up to 70% of colon cancer cases are linked to lifestyle factors, primarily diet. That's extraordinary when you think about it. 7 out of 10 cases potentially preventable. Now, let's talk about what cancer cells actually eat, because this is where it gets fascinating. Cancer cells, including colon cancer cells, have a metabolic quirk. Unlike healthy cells, which can use fat, protein, and glucose for energy, cancer cells are heavily dependent on glucose on sugar. This is called the Warburg effect, named after the scientist Otto Warburg, who discovered it nearly a century ago. Cancer cells consume glucose at a rate roughly 10 to 70 times higher than normal cells. They're essentially glucose addicts. And here's where your diet becomes a weapon. When you chronically flood your bloodstream with sugar through processed foods, refined carbohydrates, sugary drinks, and ultra-processed snacks, you are essentially rolling out a red carpet for cancer cells to thrive. I've had patients tell me, "Dr. Sophia Bennett, I don't eat that much sugar." And then I ask them to write down everything they ate for 3 days. Bread, pasta, fruit juice, granola bars, low-fat yogurt, flavored oatmeal, crackers. Every single one of those things triggers a glucose spike. Every single one feeds that cancer cell metabolism. So, the first pillar of starving colon cancer is this: reduce the chronic glucose load in your body. Not eliminate carbohydrates entirely, but make a conscious strategic decision to swap refined high glycemic foods for foods that keep your blood sugar stable. What does that look like in practice? It looks like swapping white rice for cauliflower rice or quinoa. It looks like replacing your morning toast with eggs and avocado. It looks like drinking water and green tea instead of juice and soda. Small swaps, massive difference in the cellular environment inside your colon. Now, let's talk about inflammation, because this is the second major fuel source that feeds colon cancer growth. Chronic low-grade inflammation is like leaving a pilot light on in a gas-fill room. Eventually, something ignites. And in the context of colon cancer, inflammation damages the DNA of colon cells over time, disrupts the protective mucus lining of the colon, and creates an environment where abnormal cells can multiply without being caught and destroyed by your immune system. So what drives chronic inflammation? Processed vegetable oils like soybean oil, canola oil, and corn oil are massive culprits. These oils are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. And when your ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 becomes wildly imbalanced, which it is in most Western diets, your body stays in a persistent inflammatory state. Red and processed meats are another significant driver. I'm not saying you can never have a steak, but if processed deli meats, hot dogs, and charred red meat are daily staples in your diet, your colon is living in a state of constant chemical assault. On the flip side, there are foods that are so powerfully anti-inflammatory that researchers have studied their effect directly on colon cancer cells. And what they found is remarkable. Let me walk you through a few of the heavyweights. Turmeric curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been shown in multiple studies to inhibit the growth of colon cancer cells, trigger a process called apoptosis, which is essentially cancer cell self-destruction, and block the signaling pathways that tumors use to grow new blood vessels. A tumor cannot grow beyond a certain size without developing its own blood supply. Curcumin interferes with that process. Now, turmeric on its own has poor bioavailability, meaning your body doesn't absorb it well. But when you combine it with black pepper, specifically piperine, absorption increases by up to 2,000%. That's not a typo. So the next time you cook, throw turmeric and black pepper together. Make it a habit. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage. These contain a compound called sulforaphane. And the research on sulforaphane and colon cancer is some of the most exciting data in nutritional oncology right now. Sulforaphane activates something called NRF2, a master regulator of your body's antioxidant defense systems. It essentially switches on your body's own cancer-fighting machinery. Studies have shown sulforaphane can selectively target and kill cancer stem cells, the particularly dangerous cells that are responsible for cancer recurrence and spreading while leaving healthy cells unharmed. When I read that research for the first time, I had to put the journal down and just sit with it. That's the kind of compound your grandmother's garden was full of and nobody told you mattered. Garlic. Raw garlic contains allicin. And when you crush or chop garlic and let it sit for about 10 minutes before cooking, you maximize allicin production. Studies from the World Cancer Research Fund have found that people who regularly consume garlic have significantly lower rates of colorectal cancer. Garlic sulfur compounds interfere with carcinogen activation in the colon lining and support the detoxification pathways that your liver uses to process and eliminate harmful compounds before they damage colon cells. Green tea, specifically the EGCG epigallatan galate in green tea. This polyphenol has been the subject of hundreds of studies, and in the context of colon cancer, it has been shown to inhibit tumor growth, reduce inflammation in the colon lining, and support a healthy gut microbiome. Speaking of which, let's talk about the gut microbiome because this might be the most underappreciated piece of the entire colon cancer puzzle. Your gut is home to trillions of bacteria, and these bacteria are not passive residents. They are actively communicating with your immune system, your brain, your hormonal system, and your colon lining every minute of every day. When your gut microbiome is diverse and healthy, those bacteria produce something called short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate from the fiber you eat. Butyrate is essentially the preferred fuel of your colon cells. But more than that, butyrate has been shown to have direct anti-cancer effects. It promotes the self-destruction of damaged or abnormal colon cells before they can become cancer. It reduces inflammation in the colon lining. It supports the integrity of the mucosal barrier that protects your colon wall from damage. And how do you feed butyrate-producing bacteria? Fiber. Not fiber supplements, not fiber bars, but real whole food fiber. Lentils, beans, oats, onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, bananas, apples with the skin on. These are what we call prebiotic foods, and they feed the good bacteria that produce butyrate. Research from Harvard has shown that every 10 g increase in daily fiber intake is associated with a 10% reduction in colorectal cancer risk. Think about that. Something as simple as eating more lentils and vegetables is moving the needle on your cancer risk by double digits. Now, let's talk about what a lot of people don't want to hear. Alcohol and colon cancer have a well-established relationship, and it's not a good one. Alcohol is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. There is no safe level of alcohol when it comes to cancer risk. Even moderate drinking, 1 to 2 drinks per day, has been shown in large epidemiological studies to increase colorectal cancer risk. Alcohol damages the DNA of colon cells directly, depletes folate, which is essential for DNA repair, and disrupts the gut microbiome in ways that promote the growth of harmful bacteria. If you're serious about protecting your colon, this is a conversation worth having with yourself. Physical activity is the other piece of this puzzle that doesn't get enough airtime in conversations about cancer prevention. Regular exercise reduces insulin levels, lowers circulating IGF-1, which is a growth factor that tumors love, reduces inflammation systemically, and speeds up transit time in your colon, meaning waste moves through faster, and your colon lining is exposed to potential carcinogens for shorter periods. Studies consistently show that people who exercise regularly have a 30 to 40% lower risk of developing colon cancer. You don't need to be training for a marathon. 30 minutes of brisk walking, 5 days a week is enough to meaningfully move that needle. Now, I want to go back to something I mentioned earlier, stage 4, because you saw it in the title, and I promised I'd address it. There are documented cases. They're rare, but they exist in the scientific literature of patients with advanced colon cancer who showed dramatic responses when aggressive metabolic interventions were combined with conventional treatment. Some oncology centers are now exploring ketogenic or very low carbohydrate diets alongside chemotherapy specifically because of the Warburg effect. The idea is that by cutting off the glucose supply, you weaken cancer cells and potentially make them more vulnerable to treatment, while healthy cells, which can run on ketones, are relatively protected. This is not fringe science anymore. It's being studied at major cancer centers around the world. It's not a replacement for your oncologist protocol, but it's a conversation increasingly worth having with your medical team. Vitamin D is another story that deserves its own video, honestly. But I have to mention it here. Low vitamin D levels are consistently and strongly associated with higher rates of colorectal cancer. Vitamin D receptors are found on colon cells, and vitamin D plays a direct role in regulating cell growth and preventing the kind of uncontrolled division that characterizes cancer. Get your vitamin D levels tested. Ideally, you want to be between 50 and 80 nanogs per milliliter. Most people are nowhere near that. Sunlight helps, but most of us need a quality supplement, especially in winter months. And if you live far from the equator, and finally, let's talk about screening, because no conversation about colon cancer prevention is complete without it. Colonoscopy screening saves lives. Period. Polyps, which are precancerous growths in the colon, can be found and removed during a colonoscopy before they ever have the chance to become cancer. The American Cancer Society now recommends starting screening at age 45 for average risk individuals. If you have a family history of colorectal cancer, you may need to start earlier. If you haven't had a colonoscopy and you're in that age range, please don't put it off. I know it's inconvenient. I know the prep isn't exactly a day at the spa, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do to protect yourself. Let me bring this home. Your colon is talking to you every single day through your digestion, your energy, your bowel patterns, and your overall vitality. And the decisions you make at every meal are either creating a battlefield where cancer cannot survive, or they're building a comfortable home where it can. Turmeric with black pepper, cruciferous vegetables, raw garlic, green tea, fiber from real whole foods, cutting back on processed sugar, refined oils and alcohol, moving your body consistently, getting your vitamin D checked, getting screened. These are not complicated interventions. They are practical, evidence-based actions that are available to every single person watching this right now. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. And if you're watching this because you or someone you love is already dealing with a cancer diagnosis, please share this with them and encourage them to talk to their oncologist about how nutritional strategies can complement their treatment plan. The research is there. The conversation is worth having. I'm Dr. Sophia Bennett. If this video was valuable to you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe, because every week we are going deep into the science of how you can live healthier, longer, and stronger. Drop a comment below and let me know what you want me to cover next. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves.